Imagine this, you're building a complex web application and you need a way to show different content in the same layout. Maybe a dashboard with a nav bar and then multiple cards to show your revenue, your customers, analytics, and at the same time you want to show a pending state, a error state, and you don't want to manipulate the URL. Most developers would probably say right now, wow, this kinda sounds tricky, but what if I told you that there's a feature in Next.js that allows you to do exactly this? And yet, barely 5% of developers know how to use it or even heard about it. So, in today's video, we're going to look at parallel routes, a game-changing Next.js feature that allows you to render multiple pages, not components, in the same layout, and all of this while keeping your URL intact. Sounds cool, right? So if you're building any sort of dashboard application, then this video is a must for you. And now with all of this out of the way, let's roll the video. Let's go! So let's get started with parallel routes. So I'm in the Next.js documentation and let's see what they say. So they say parallel routes allow you to simultaneously or conditionally render one or more pages within the same layout. They are useful for highly dynamic sections of an app such as dashboards and feeds on social sites. So when I read this the first time, I thought, wow, Next.js, why the hell is this so complicated? Can't you make it a bit simpler? And I guess this is by design. And to explain to you the concept of parallel routes, I think it's best to pair it with a diagram. So this is a diagram which I've created. And the first thing you should know is that this is on localhost 3000/dashboard. So you see one route segment /dashboard. And then we have our browser, we have a nav bar, we have this dashboard title, and we have two cards. One is for team members and one is for users. In the team members card, you would probably render your employees like software engineer, HR, and maybe a janitor. And in the users component or in the users card, you would render all of your users, paying users, signed up users, whatever you want. So this is quite a standard admin dashboard, I would say. And let me ask you this, how would you create such a layout? Most of you would probably say something like this. You would first of all create a Next.js project, then you would create a layout file. In the layout, you would render a nav bar, then you would create a page.tsx. Inside of there, you would render this dashboard title, and then you would create two components, one for the team members and one for the users. These would probably be server components to fetch the data, and then you would render everything. This is probably the most standard answer, and it isn't wrong. That's fine. You can do that. Nothing is wrong with that. It will work, and that's good. But what if I tell you that there's an even better and easier solution? And that's where parallel routes come into play. So as they say, for example, considering a dashboard, you can use parallel routes to simultaneously render the team and analytics pages. We want to render right here the team members and the users page. So instead of rendering a component, you can render a actual page.tsx which does not get mapped to the URL. Okay, let me break it down a bit further. I think this is a bit complex. The problem which you have with components is that you don't have the same capabilities as a standard Next.js page.tsx. So when you create a route with Next.js, you have the benefit that you can use a few, let's say, features. This is first of all the loading.tsx file, and then you have also the error.tsx file. This is something which you only have with actual routes. With the loading file, you create a suspense boundary, or in other words the fallback, and with the error file you create whatever you want to render when a error happens. If you use components, as we see right here, you don't have this benefit. You would have to create your manual suspense boundaries, and error handling is also not as easy with an error file. So what is if instead of rendering components, you could render the same, I guess, page, but this page is not mapped to the URL? Because if you would create a standard page.tsx, you would have to create a /dashboard/team members/users route. But what is if you can render one dashboard route and then render two pages simultaneously in the layout. So you have a dashboard layout, and in the dashboard layout, you have two routes or two pages. I'm sorry, these are not routes, these are pages. And these pages have the same benefits as standard routes. As mentioned, the loading file and the error file. And right here, they also show it to you with an example. So this is the dashboard, and in the dashboard, they render two, I guess, pages, so the A page and the B page, so for the team members and analytics. And the nice thing is that these pages don't get mapped to the URL. It's still /dashboard, but you get all of the benefits of a standard page. And now you might ask me, okay, Jan, this sounds quite cool. I get a lot of benefits. It does not map to the URL. I get the loading file, the error file, and you mentioned that it's easier. So how can I implement that? Well, that's a good question. Let me show it to you. You will use something which they name slots. So this is the naming convention. A slot is a parallel route. And these are defined with this @ prefix. So as they say, @folder, and you would say, for example, @team or @analytics, or as we said, @users. This is how you create a slot, or in other words, a parallel route. And I guess let me show you how to implement it. So this is my Next.js project. I have already initialized it. As you see, it's completely bare bones. If I open the dev server, you see there's nothing special about it. I have also installed Shadcn UI just for, I guess, easier components and styling, but that's all. It's completely standard. And I want to now implement this dashboard layout. This means I want to create, first of all, the dashboard route, and then I want to create these two parallel routes. How do you do that? Well, let's go in the app folder. Let's first of all create our standard dashboard route, so dashboard folder. Inside of here, let's create a page.tsx. Let's do a export default function, and let me say dashboard page, and let's just save it. If I go back to our dev server, I can go to the URL and say /dashboard, and now you see dashboard page. This is very standard. This is standard routing in Next.js, and this shouldn't be anything new to you. Let's now create a layout file. So let's again go in the app folder, dashboard folder. Let's create a layout.tsx, and let me initialize it really quick. So I've now initialized this route. As you see, we do a export default function. So this export default dashboard layout, we get our children through the params. Then I render a little h1. This is for our navbar. And you know what? I can say, hey, this is the navbar or the dashboard layout navbar, and then I render my children down below. If I save it and go back and do a hard refresh, you see, hey, this is the dashboard layout navbar, and then we say dashboard page. So this is already kind of the layout which I want. We render the navbar, and then I render this h1 if you want to call it like that. But now I want to render these two parallel routes for the team members and for the users. How do I do that? Again, we want to use slots, so this @ convention. So let's go back, let's again open the Explorer, let's go in the app folder, dashboard folder, and let's create a new folder. And inside of here, as mentioned, we want to use the @ prefix. And for the name, let's say team. And then in this team folder, I can create a standard page.tsx. So as you know, with your standard routes, you create a page.tsx, and that's the same thing which we want to do in this slot folder. Inside of here, you do the same thing as with any other route. This is a export default function. We can say for the name team slot, and let me render team slot. If I now save it and go back and do a hard refresh, you will see nothing has changed. I don't see my slot. How can I render my slot underneath this dashboard page? Well, for that you will go to the dashboard layout where we render our children, and in the params you can now get your slot or your slots if you have multiple. And what slot do I want to get? Well, our slot is called team. So in my params, after the children, I can get my team, and this team will be of type React Node. So let's say team is of type React Node. What I can do now is go underneath this div, and I can render another div, and inside of here, let's just render our team. Let's save it, let's go back, and now you see team slot. If I do a hard refresh, everything still works, and that's great. So as you see, we render kinda a component, but instead of creating a component, we have created a page. But this page does not get mapped to our URL. And this is very cool, because as mentioned, if I open again the Explorer, in this @team folder, so in the slot, I can use all of the conventions which you know from routes. The loading file, the error file, and whatever you want. And since you now know how to render slots, let's now also create a second slot, so for our users. And you know what? I will do it for myself, and you will also do it for yourself. So as you see, I have created a new folder in the dashboard folder. This is the add users folder. Inside of here, we have a page.tsx, and this is a standard export default function, and I just return user slot. I can now go back to the layout, and then in the params, I can also get my users. And please make sure that the spelling matches your folder name. So if this folder is called hello, then you want to get hello in the params. If it's called yo what's up, then you want to get yo what's up in the params. For the type, users is again React Node, and then let's go underneath our team div, let's create another div, and let me render my users. Let's save it, let's go back, let's do a hard refresh, and now you see, hey, the dashboard layout navbar, then the dashboard page, the team slot, and the user slot. So as you see in theory, we currently render 3 routes. We first of all have our index page, and inside of here we say dashboard page. Then we have our second page, and this is for the users. And then we have our third page, and this is for the team. And as you see, these 3 pages are all rendered in the same layout. And since we now know that this all works, let me now style it a bit to make it look a bit better. So for the layout, let's go back, let me paste what I've styled. So we again have the H1, and then for our 2 slots, I just render a grid columns of 2, gap 10, and margin top of 10. So you see they are now aligned horizontally, and instead of just returning a div with the text, so for example for the team slot, I want to render a card component. And that's what I've done. In this team slot, I now return a card, and in this card we have a card title, we have our card content. Inside of here we render team 1, team 2, team 3, and team 4, and then we have a little link which says go to admin. We will come to that in a second. And if I save it and go back, you see we have team 1, team 2, team 3, and team 4, and then this link. I won't click it right now, we will do that in a second. Let me also style the user slot. So as you see, I have again pasted a card with card title and then the card content. And if I save it and go back, you now see we have 2 cards. One says here you will see your team members, and the other one says here you will see your users. But the problem with them is that the functionality, I guess, is still the same as with a standard component. There's nothing groundbreaking, there's nothing better, there's nothing faster. So let me now show you the 2 features which I talked about, and this is the loading file and the error file. So for that, let's go back, let's open the Explorer, and let me go right here in the team folder. Let me create first of all a loading.tsx, and let me also create a error.tsx. For the loading file, I will just return a skeleton with a custom height and a width of full, and for the error file, I will just return a div with a height or a custom height, width or full, and then a background color. And then I render an H1 and say error. So this is very simple, and one thing which you should know is that whenever you render a error file, you have to always mark it as use client. And we now know that, so we have the error file, we have the loading file. Let's again look at the folder structure. So we have an app folder, dashboard folder, and then we have our team folder, and inside of here we have the error file, loading file, and page.tsx. One thing which I want to now do is, I guess, fetch data in the team slot route and add a delay of 3 seconds. So that's what I've done. We have an async function get team, and inside of here I have a delay of 2 seconds. Let's maybe change it to 3 seconds, and let's save it. Let's go back and let's do a hard refresh. And as you see, our loading file works, and then you see our page. Let me also show you how the error file works. So at the end, we can throw an error. Let me uncomment this. Let's save it. So I just do and throw new error. And if I go back and do a hard refresh, we first of all have our loading file, the suspense fallback, and then we see this error file. So as you see, we first of all load our data, and once our data is loaded, we throw an error. And that's why you first of all see this fallback, and then once the data is finished loading, we get this error. And since we are in development, we also get this little pop-up at the bottom, but when you are in production, you wouldn't get it. You would only see this red screen. So these are the 2 benefits which I talked about. Again, the loading file and the error file. They are huge time savers, and I love that you can implement them so quickly. One thing which I want to now also show you is subrouting in parallel routes. So let's go back. let's open the Explorer file, and let's say in our team folder, so in the team route, I guess in the team page, I want to create another route, and this will be a admin route. This means in this route, I only want to see the team members which are marked as admin. So in the team folder, I can create another folder. Let's call it admin, and in the admin folder, let's create a page.tsx. For the code, it's again super simple. This is a export default function. We have our card, the card title, and in the card content, I say admin1, admin2, and admin3. So let's go back. Let's again do a hard refresh. Everything still works. I deleted this little throw new error, so you see the route works. And what I want to do is redirect myself to this admin route. Again, let me show it to you. We have our app folder, dashboard folder, team folder, and in the team folder, I have the admin route. So this is a sub route of this team route. So let's go back. If I hover over go to team, I redirect myself to /dashboard/admin. Let me show it to you. So in the team folder, the page.tsx, we have this link and I say /dashboard/admin. So if I go back and click on go to admin, you now see here you will see team members and it says admin1, admin2 and admin3. And you will also see that the URL has updated. It's now /dashboard/admin. And the nice thing is that this is a partial render. As you see, the right side is still persisted. We still see here you will see your users. It hasn't re-rendered, but the left card, the left page has re-rendered. And the technical term for that is a partial render. But here's the problem. If I do a hard refresh, we get a 4.4 not found. Okay, that's weird. So if I do a soft navigation, so let's again wait for this suspense boundary. If I do a soft navigation, everything works. But if I do a hard refresh, I get a 4.4 not found. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that if we do a hard refresh, the state for the right card is lost. And this means we render a 4.4 not found because Next.js does not really know what it should render for this page and also for this page. Because again, you have to think of this layout as 3 pages. The dashboard page, the team page, and then also the users page. These are 3 pages. And what you have to do is create a default file, and this will tell Next.js what it should render as a default. And again, let me dumb it down a bit. So if we go to admin, you see the route is /dashboard/admin. But the problem which we have right now is that the team folder has this admin folder, but the users folder does not have an admin folder. This means the users folder on a hard refresh does not have any state for this admin route, which means we get a 4.4 not found. And that's also the same thing for the page.tsx. We don't have a admin route, which means Next.js does not know what it should render. It does not have any state. It's undefined, which means we render automatically a 4.4 not found. So the fix for that is to render a default file, and the default file is what is rendered when Next.js does not know what it should render. That means when the state is not there. And where do we have to create the default file? Well, there are 2 pages which don't have any state, and this is users and then our standard root app directory. Because the team folder has an admin route, the other routes or the other pages don't have an admin route. So let's go in the users folder, and inside of here we can create a new file. We can name it default.tsx, and you can render whatever you want. So we can for now just say default route. And then we have to also create a default file in the dashboard folder. So let's create a new file. Let's name it default.tsx. And let me just copy paste the code. So I will copy it. Let me go to this default.tsx and let's paste it. So now we have 2 default files. This means if we redirect to this admin route, we now have a default state both for the root dashboard route and then also for this users slot. And this means if I go back and do a hard refresh, we see default route, default route. You can render whatever you want for the default route. In theory, you can just copy paste the code from your page.tsx and paste it for the default route. It will still function the same. So now you see I copy pasted it, and instead of rendering the standard slot, we now render the default route, but the code is still the same. Again, you have to create a default file because state is lost. And if you do a soft navigation, you have a partial render. This means state is still persistent. existed. But if you do a hard refresh, you don't have any state anymore, which means Next.js has to know what it should render. And we tell Next.js that with this default file. This means if I do a hard refresh, everything still works. And now there's one more thing which I want to show you with parallel routes, and that's conditional routing. So let's go back to our layout, so to our dashboard layout. Inside of here you see we render our team and our users. Let's create a constant, let's say role, and this will be equal to admin. And instead of rendering this div, I can do a turn, or these two divs, I can do a ternary, and I can say, hey, if the role is admin, let me render the team slot, and if not, let me render the user slot. So let's go back. Let me do again a hard refresh, and now you see we only have one slot, and this is because the user is a admin. I only see the team slot. If the user wouldn't be a admin, I would see a user slot, and the functionality is still the same. I can still go to the admin route, everything still works, but as you see, this is this conditional rendering, and with that you can create super complex layouts which would probably break the scope of this video, but I guess as you see, you have endless opportunity. You have so many things which you can create with these parallel routes, and it's super cool. So friends, you now know how parallel routes work. This means you know how to create slots, how to render them in the layout, how to, for example, create a loading file, the error file, how to also render them conditionally, because this is also quite important, and also you know why you should create a default file. Again, you create a default file because on a hard refresh, state is lost. This means it can't do a partial render, it has to do a hard refresh, and there's no state, which means Next.js has to know what it should render. And we tell Next.js that with this default file. And yeah, everyone, I think that's all I wanted to mention. So I hope I can see you in the next video, and without any further ado, enjoy your day and bye!